there. Today I'm going to tell you about 10 things that I think are just so Danish. Stay tuned. Hi there, welcome back. If you're new to my channel, my name is Kelly and I'm an American living in Denmark. Go ahead and hit that red subscribe button so we can get started. So today I'm going to tell you about 10 things that I think are so Danish, and these are just 10 that come off the top of my head. I know that there are plenty more out there, but let's just start with these 10, shall we? Number 1 is the Danish-style cheese cutter. Now in the US, we buy cheese normally that's cut, or we do buy bricks of cheese, but I don't know, it's just different. So they have this cheese cutter here in Denmark, and it looks like this. I tried to wipe it off, I just used it. It's dirty. But it has two kind of wires on either side, and it's a big one and a small one. I guess it depends on how thin or thick you want to cut your cheese. And they have this thing called Danish Havarti. It's a very yummy, kind of like a creamy, soft cheese. I think this is delicious. And so we get this all the time. We call this round cheese. And I don't know how it happened. It looks like it's a little lopsided, but usually when you buy it, it's nice and flat and it's so easy to cut, but whatever. I probably did it. So here I'm going to show you. You just kind of line this up here and then you just pull it back and voila. Oops. And voila. Yeah. My cheese is not very straight. But that is something I think is just so Danish. Another thing that I think is so Danish, and it's even called Danish water, Danske Vand. This is a very popular type of canned water. And yes, you heard me correctly, canned water. This is flavored carbonated water. And when I first came to Denmark 12 years ago, 13 years ago, while I was dating my husband, I could not stand carbonated water. I mean, even 20 some years ago, when I first started coming to Europe, I could not stand carbonated water. I kept thinking, I can't drink this. This is weird. But I've gotten so used to it and I actually really love it. And this is my favorite. This is actually, it's blueberry and pomegranate combined. I just think this, I love anything with blueberry, really. But this in Denmark, they call Danske Vand or Danish water. It's so funny. I don't know why they do that. But to me, that's so Danish. Because even people who come from other countries, they say, what is that? And I'm thinking, you're European. Don't you know what carbonated water is? But evidently, this is so Danish. This, by the way, is not a sponsor, but if you are from this type of water company, hey, hit me up. I would love to try all of your different kinds of water. Wouldn't that make a great taste testing video? I think it would. Another thing that I think is so Danish is clogs. Now, in the US, clogs was something, a type of shoe that people would wear maybe, in the 1970s or something? But clogs are what they wear in the gardens. I think a lot of times we think of the Dutch who wear their wooden shoes. This is similar to that. There are these black clogs that a lot of people have who have, well, I would say backyards. And you would find them in most Danish homes. Okay, maybe you're some sort of young, hip person from Copenhagen and says, I've never owned a pair. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about real Danes. Just kidding. But every home I've been in, and I'm noticing a lot of people say, oh, that's not true, because they live in a big city or because they're younger and they don't know a lot about this traditional small town Denmark. But everybody in small towns, I swear, they have these black clog garden shoes. And that to me is so Danish. Another thing that I think is so Danish is bike traffic. It is so common in the morning to see bike after bike, or, sometime when school gets out, just to see bikes galore. You have rush hour for cars, There's also rush hour for bikes in the morning. It is crazy. There's these long lines of bikes. I've not seen that in other places. I've not seen that in other countries. And it's in even my small town. It's really throughout Denmark. I know that the bike lanes in Copenhagen are very, very large because they have so many people who ride bikes. Well, that's just Denmark. Another thing that I think is so Danish is strollers outside. And it's not just leaving your stroller outside the restaurant, but your baby is still in it. That is so Danish. I am so glad that I raised my babies in the US because I would be freaking out with paranoia and wanting to peek at them every 5 seconds. That's just me as a mom. I actually wore my children in a carrier. I almost never used a stroller, almost never. So they were constantly on me. That's how much I want my baby around me. That's how kind of I guess that might tell you a little bit about my parenting style. But if you come to Denmark and you are somewhere where there's a lot of strollers outside, it's almost like a little stroller parking lot, you know, like how they would have an area for bikes. They have an area for strollers. And you're thinking, what's with all that? Well, they have these buggy strollers, which reminds me of what we would have used in the US in the 1950s. It's not like any stroller that we have in the US. It's like a bed, so the baby can lay down and so they can sleep, and you're out and about and the baby is laying down and they can take a nap. And instead of taking the baby out and going into the cafe with you, the baby could just stay there and sleep. A lot of times when people want to put their babies to bed, not at nighttime, but just for a nap, they'll put their baby in the stroller and put the stroller outside. Now in the US, my boys took naps outside plenty of times, but I really had to watch them because even in our backyard, we had raccoons, we had groundhogs, we had deer, we had animals in our backyard. And I didn't live in the middle of nowhere. So it's a little different dynamic. Yeah, they're a little bit safer when they're propped up in their stroller and everything. And my boys were kind of outside in like a little tent or on a blanket or something like that. So it was very different. But if you go and you see a lot of strollers with babies inside, that's just so Danish. Another thing that I think is so Danish, and yeah, it's the way you dress, people. I never could do this. I think it's because I'm old, right? I think it's because I'm in my 40s, I'm set in my ways, there's no going back. But a lot of, let's just say younger people, because I don't think I've really seen anyone my age, anyone older who do this. But the outfit that I think is so Danish is wearing black, 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 black. Black from neck to ankle. Everything black. And then bright white tennis shoes. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. And it will be all year long. In the US, we have this rule that you don't wear white tennis shoes between, we say Labor Day and Memorial Day, but you don't know what that means. So it's the beginning of September until the end of May. And that has always been like this understood rule of kind of what we wear. Of course, things are changing. You have all these young people who wear their tennis shoes and stuff. And yeah, that's probably much different now. But it's something that I just see often, and I just keep thinking, oh, it's Danish. And you know, as a teacher working in a school, I can't tell you how many times they would come in just full on black. And it always seems to be like older girls. You know, girls that are like 15 and maybe to like, I don't know, in their 20s. So maybe that age range, I think it's very popular. But I also think it is just so Danish. Another thing that I think is so Danish is actually traditional Danish. So again, if you're this young person or you come from a big city and everything in your home is modern and everything in your friends' homes are modern and you're all about everything being white and sterile looking with very little decorations. I mean, look behind me. This is most definitely not me. I really appreciate old-fashioned Denmark type of stuff. I mean, I've got like this big old cabinet behind me that's brown. I like brown. The Danes like white. You see a lot of white stuff. But if you go into the home of an older Dane, and I'm not going to say an older Dane everywhere because an older Dane in Copenhagen, this might not be the case. I don't know, really. If you go into an older Dane's home, you will find multiple table and chair sets. And you're thinking, what does that have to do with anything? When we bought our house was built in like 1960 or something, and there was a lot of things that had been updated throughout the years, a lot of things that had not. And the people who lived in this house before were probably in their, I don't know, 80s maybe? I'm just taking a guess. Somewhere like that. But they've retired, they've moved on, and now the house is ours. A lot of the furniture that they had in the house, they left here. And it's so funny, I cannot tell you how many table and chair sets that we got rid of. It just blows my mind. We had this sunroom that had 2 table and chair sets. So there's a table with chairs all around it. And it's just crazy that we would have more than one. In the US, we would just have one, and that would be it. We'd have a dining room table, and we would have a porch set outside, and that would be it. But here in Denmark, they have like 5 or 6. It's crazy. Our dining room would have a table. Our kitchen would have a table. The sunroom would have 2 tables. And like I said, chairs are always around the tables. We have a fireplace table with chairs around it. There was another room that had a round table with round chairs around it. There was a spot in our living room that had a coffee table with 2 chairs and a couch around it. Then we had a little sitting area where there was a TV and chairs and a table. It's just crazy how many we had. I can't tell you. Outside in the backyard, we had 2 chair and table sets. What? I don't know how many people they had over in their house at one period of time, but there were only 2 people who lived here. It's so traditional Danish. You would not see this in a modern Danish home. And I'm totally going to be making a video about the difference between traditional Danes and modern Danes, especially with what you have in your homes. It's crazy. But multiple table set, that's very traditional Danish. Another thing that it is so Danish is the Danish bread. When we were in the US, you could not find this Danish rye bread really anywhere. My husband had to make it. Sometimes we go to IKEA and they would have like this tall carton of like bread mix that he would take home and make. But then there was, I don't know, a course of a couple of years when our IKEA in Chicago didn't have it. And so my husband really tried different recipes of his own to make it, but it just didn't turn out the way that it is here. Like you go to the grocery store and you can buy it. So the Danish bread is, in my mind, so Danish. It's not something you can get in other places. If you get rye bread in other places, it's not the same. Another thing to go along with that is the Danish smørrebrød. And with that, you have, it's so funny because there's one piece of bread and then on top of it, you will put butter. And then after the butter, you will have things like, it's some things that we call pålæg. And pålæg can be anything that you put on top of your bread. Usually it's like lunch meats, cut up vegetables. It's a variety of different things. But when you look at it, there's really only maybe 3 things. One that is very popular is you take egg slices and then you put shrimp on top of it. I'm not a big shrimp fan, so I always kind of scrape it off and give it to my kids and I just eat the eggs. But usually on your bread, there will be maybe like 2 or 3 things, and then that's it. And then you'll take another bread, and that one will only have like 2 or 3 things on it. It's so different compared to the US. I'm so used to eating like bagel sandwiches where I just load this stuff on there, you know, and it's like, oh, I can't even bite it, it's so large. Or you could just make your own, you know, like go to Subway. We don't have that option here. Everything is just the rye bread with the pålæg on the top. But I have to tell you, it's very pretty. It's very pretty, and it just makes it feel like your lunch, and of course you're eating it with your fork and knife. It makes you feel like your lunch is very fancy when you're eating something like that. Everything looks very professionally done, in my opinion, but it's also very Danish. The last thing that I think is very Danish is café okay. This is coffee and cake, and you're thinking, how can coffee and cake be specific to one country? Well, it's not. It's not. It's the fact that Danes take time out of their day for coffee and cake. I would say that it's somewhere around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, especially on a weekend. If we have my mother-in-law visiting, for example, or if we have people coming and say, oh, we'll have them for coffee and cake. And it's just very standard to have somebody over for coffee and cake. When I worked as a teacher in the schools, we would have cake day. One day a week, somebody was designated to bring in the cake. I haven't seen that happen so far with my kids at school, but it could be because they're younger and the teachers don't want to promote eating sugar once a week like that. I don't know. They're already too hyper. I get it. But cake is such a big part of Danish culture. And coffee, forget about it. It's crazy. I mean, coffee. You want to meet somebody? Let's meet for coffee. Coffee and cake are somehow incorporated in a lot of things that you do in Denmark. There's always a coffee break at your work. And I've worked many years in different jobs in the US, and we never really had that time where it was, okay, drop everything, go take your 15 minutes of coffee and perhaps cake with your colleagues. It's just really quite something interesting because I think that it helps the Danes to interact with each other, and it also helps them to take a little bit of a break. It's one thing that I really like about Denmark. I personally don't drink coffee. So yeah, I'm already a black sheep in that case, but it's fine. I can get my tea and nobody notices. But I really like that they take time out to sit down with people, have a conversation, just relax a little bit. And coffee and cake is their way of doing that, but there's so many other ways that they incorporate it. And I think, in my opinion, that is so Danish. Thanks for coming along with these 10 things that are so Danish. I really hope that you enjoyed them. Perhaps these are things that you've noticed if you are a foreigner in Denmark, or if you're somebody that lives in Denmark and you're Danish yourself and you say, oh, I never realized that these things were very specific to our country and our culture. Well, now you know. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know that you really enjoyed this video and you really enjoy what I do here on my channel. Don't forget to check out my blog where I now have a new mom life section. So I'm telling you some of these silly stories that are happening with my boys, as well as a lot of other things with great places to go to in Denmark. You need to check that out. I hope to see you in another video, and as always, take care.